Hey. So I'm Josia Tamira Crossley, as most of you know, and I am super happy to be here today again with Irene Lyon. And Irene is a nervous system specialist and somatic healing practitioner and founder of Smart Body, Smart Mind, a 12-week online program that helps to restore nervous system regulation through polyvagal theory, informed education, practical neurosensory exercises, and interactive support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But yeah, Irene's trained in somatic experiencing, the Feldenkrais method, as well as the work of Dr. Kathy Kane called Somatic Practice, which has a focus on touch therapy for early developmental trauma. I know you've done lots of other things as well, Irene, and you've been teaching for a long time now. So yeah, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to be here with you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we first met maybe like 7 or so years ago.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. And through a mutual friend of ours, and I at the time was running an online program that was focused on nutrition and lifestyle to support folks who are struggling with burnout and adrenal fatigue. And she thought that we might be a good match to support each other's work. And what happened when I met you is I actually ended up deciding to take your course, and it literally changed my life and just like opened up this whole new level of healing for me. I'd been studying somatic experiencing just through reading all of Peter Levine's books. Had a little young child at that time, so I was doing a lot of learning just through reading. And so I had an understanding of the work, but actually studying with you and doing the work in that way, I started to really realize that while nutrition and lifestyle choices and daily practices, these kind of things can definitely support healing from burnout, adrenal fatigue, digestive issues, these kind of physical health stuff, that the foundation of healing this stuff actually still has to come from nervous system regulation. And yeah, so can you say a bit more about why that is?
You betcha. Yeah, well, I didn't know this either in my early years working in health, and I was in the fitness industry and nutrition and Feldenkrais, which is it's a mind-body movement methodology with a hands-on component as well. So I was, deep into healing work, helping work. And what happened was, it was like 2008. I was practicing the Feldenkrais method and working really with the nervous system, but at a more physical level. And a lot of people were getting better. And I got into the work because I had some really bad injuries, knee injuries from my sport that weren't getting better with general physical therapy and exercise. And so I was doing some really good work with people, but there was like 50%, kind of guessing on that number, but like a very large chunk of my clients weren't getting better with the Feldenkrais work alone. So alone. And I kind of was like, what's wrong here? Because other people are. I did. So what's missing? And so I started talking to some of my colleagues in the Feldenkrais world, but some of them also studied somatic experiencing. And I think I probably got Peter's books, started reading, and then was like, wow, this is so important. And so what I learned, obviously, as I started to read his books, but then decided to train in somatic experiencing, was that when our autonomic nervous system has old trapped stresses, and I don't just mean like, oh my God, I have a paper that's due, I'm stressed, but like scary bad events from our past, or even like yesterday, things that we had happened to us, but we didn't have any idea how intense it was, or maybe we did, and we shut that stuff down.
We didn't have the ability to integrate it.
We just couldn't integrate it. We didn't even know that we had this pain in our body because we were so numbed out from other stuff that occurred to us. So what I started to realize in a very macro way was when we don't work with these fight, flight, and freeze survival energies that are naturally occurring when we have stressful, very traumatic things happen to us. If we don't work with those things, they stay in us in many ways, and they create this thing called dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. And then the reason why that's important for the whole global system is the autonomic nervous system regulates everything in our physiology. As you mentioned, when you were talking about you were doing nutrition and that, it regulates our digestion, our immune system, our hormone system, our cardiovascular system, our ability to engage and attune to others, to listen and to feel and to be empathetic. It also governs our ability to think clearly. So when our autonomic nervous system has got just this message that's saying danger, danger, danger all the time, we just can't function properly. And so it was kind of like this, it was like this is insane. And then of course, as I learned more and did more higher level learning with my mentors and the teachers, and I started seeing more clients in this lens, it became very clear to me that, and the research shows this, that a lot of the chronic conditions that we live with as humans in the current time are a result, not completely, but a big part is due to this dysregulation and the nervous system. So that was sort of like okay, I better know more about this.
Yeah.
And then of course, when you go down that rabbit hole, there's just so many other tentacles of this work.
Yeah.
Attachment trauma, surgical traumas.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, like layers and tangents. And yeah.
100%. So that was kind of for me. I realized, okay, this nervous system is really important beyond just the movement that I was already really expertised in. We have to get into the energy, the electrical impulses, the stored memories in the body, so that we can work with them, so that they can exit and integrate, so that we're not holding all that inside, all that toxic. It's basically toxicity, right? We always we talk about toxins and chemicals in our food and the air, and those are all essential for us to get out of our bodies and out of our environment. And there's even more invisible things that are the stresses that we never processed, that are like toxins that are staying inside, creating illness in the system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's so powerful and important. I mean, and that was so key for me, because I found myself after I had my son in my like mid-20s, and I had like pretty severe adrenal fatigue, and it was like, well, where is that coming from? And so I had to really look at the roots of that, and it's a big journey. It's a big journey.
It is, and it's sort of one of those journeys that, at least at this point, it's kind of just lifelong. And that could be one of the distinguishing factors with this work, is that there's always, it seems to be another layer. I'm sure you can attest to that. Even when you have attained fairly solid regulation of your nervous system, it amazes me how much the human system can store and hold. And we don't know what it's like to live in a humanity where the bulk of our, folks, the bulk of humanity is not stuck in survival stress.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's really interesting when you think about that. It's like, wow, like what if in another 50 years, it could be sooner, if we really, went crazy and really got this work into all the systems. That would be nice, please. But it so much in our current world is driven by this stored fear.
Yeah, exactly. That survival fear, right?
You got it.
And it's incredible how much, it affects our physiology, our adrenals, our digestion, the level of inflammation in our bodies, our energy levels. and our emotional state too, right? Our mental health. And I think it's something that you've been really good at is, teaching people that trauma isn't just mental health stuff, anxiety, depression. It is, but it's also these other physiological issues. You talk about the ACE study and you talk about, your program is teaching people how to become their own medicine. And I wonder if you can say a little bit about, why you feel like that's important for people to have these skills and this knowledge themselves instead of just working with a therapist who might be holding that information.
That's a really good question. So I was working in private practice for quite a while. When I got into the fitness world and Feldenkrais, I was, one-on-one personal training sessions, Feldenkrais sessions, somatic experiencing sessions. And I really liked it. I liked working with people one-on-one. I still do. But what was happening was I was seeing all these people one-on-one, and a lot of the time was spent, like I have a piece of paper here, right? Like I would be drawing pictures of graphs and nervous system, and this is what happens here, and that's what happens there. And then I would start, I was starting to, right before I kind of created this online stuff, make audio sessions. Like I would tape, record, audio.
You just did it yourself.
Good old cassette tapes. It was actually on cassette tapes a long time ago.
That's amazing.
I actually just threw some of those out. It's funny. I kind of felt bad throwing them out, but I'm like, I'm never going to use these on cassette, right?
That's awesome.
But I started recording lessons. I call them lessons, exercises, which now I call neurosensory exercises, just guiding people to be in their bodies, in their environment, feeling like parts of their body, much different than meditation, more very specific intention and attention to parts of the body and how you connect feeling this system with the outside world at the same time.
Right. And that relationship, so that dual awareness.
And that's one of the parts that's missing, I have found, in a lot of the meditative mind-body practices, is it's all internal, which is fine. But we live in an environment where there's stuff around us, and we're not all living up on a pristine, monastery in the Himalayas, breathing fresh air with no stress around us. Like, we have to learn how to be in our bodies while eyes open with the world. So I started creating these audio things, and then just one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I had enough content, enough information to kind of create what is now known as an online program or course. And so when I was sort of starting to think about shifting my online practice or my private practice, the online space just was exploding. And so it was a risk. It was not what had been done before. I had a few colleagues say, there's no way you can do this, Irene. You have to do this work one-on-one with a person in the same room. That's the only way you can do it. People actually say that to me. Bless their heart. And I was like,
you've proven them wrong, haven't you? I think,
yes, I have.
Thousands of people have gone through your program.
So many people now do Zoom sessions for therapy and Zoom yoga. And clearly we can learn in this space. Of course, it's not like you can't get a massage over the internet, that kind of thing. But what I found was that obviously the person has to want to learn. Right? They have to want it. They want to learn about themselves. And that idea of becoming your own medicine, to tie that back in, is teaching people how to be with their bodies and their physiology and all the sensations that are a myriad of color and texture and experience, not as okay, if you're feeling this tightness here, go do this sound. Or if you're feeling this heat in your body, that must mean this, not that, because that falls short because the human experience is so vast.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And it's like we
so
can't, it's like we're not there to fix what's,
exactly.
yeah.
And that was, it was, I remember the first few years of the course, a lot of the students would say, can't you just make a list that says when I'm feeling this, go to number 5 or go to number 7?
Uh-huh,
And it's like, no, I can't. Because
uh-huh.
what if you go to that and it doesn't offer what you need in that moment?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because
So
yeah, because it's
go
not
ahead.
it's not a fixing. It's more like a rewiring back to, like, I
Yeah,
think of it as almost like an undoing, a rewiring back
yeah,
to our how we would have been wired if we grew up in healthy culture, connected to nature, connected to each other, supported relationally. It's like getting back to that,
yes,
which is not a it's not a fixing of anxiety or a fixing. It's like a coming into ourselves more fully.
100%.
Yeah.
And I kind of call it, there's many words, but growing foundation, growing capacity.
Mhm.
And as you said, like if we were raised in an environment that provided us safety,
Mhm.
connection, attunement,
Mhm.
proper boundaries, expression of all emotion,
Mhm.
not just
Yeah.
ones that are, and I'm saying this with air quotes, good
Yeah.
versus ones that are bad. If
Yeah.
we had that upbringing and we were cared for with gentle touch. I actually was just talking to someone else on an interview, and we were talking about traumas that people have that can't really be pinpointed to like an abuse or an event.
Mhm.
And I,
Mhm.
I gave the example, like if you've ever had a medical procedure or even a bodywork session or a hug from someone and their fingers are nervous,
Yeah. Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
shaky or they're pokey and they don't know how to like
Yeah.
melt,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
it feels not nice. Like you kind of
Yeah.
want them to stop touching you and you feel a little unsafe. It's like I've
Yeah.
had blood taken because of all the surgeries I've had to have in my day or
Mhm.
IVs put in. And a
Mhm.
confident, caring, very there grounded nurse, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
take my arm. But
Yeah.
when you see the nurse come in or the doctor and they're just a little scattered,
Yeah.
your system starts to get a little worried.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
is this gonna hurt? Like, and then you feel that you can't tell them that you're a little worried, and
Uh-huh.
it snowballs.
Yeah.
And so if we think about like little babies, obviously they're little. When
Mhm.
babies come out, they're pretty fresh and they're pretty new to everything, and they
Mhm.
will feel that energy as I'm here, you're safe, I'm gonna hold you without any worry,
Mhm.
versus
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
parents. And again, this isn't the parents' fault because they don't know that they're even probably like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
They're just
that,
in their own experience of, yeah.
exactly. So
Mhm.
a lot of what I would say our students and clients have, and of course I'm being very general and making assumption, but my
Mhm.
sense, because this work has not penetrated the whole world
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
is there's a lot of people here who are adults who had mums and dads and nannies and caregivers who were nervous, who were
Mhm.
storing lots of that survival energy, who
Mhm.
weren't comfortable in their own body, or who were terrified of the infant because they didn't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
Because we're just not around a lot of infants in our society. It's very, can't
Yeah.
remember the last time I held a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Totally.
it just
That's true,
like
yeah.
just doesn't happen very often. Like a puppy, sure, a kitten maybe. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I say that because in the program, we're teaching you, the student, how to reconnect to yourself and be with
Mhm.
yourself in a
Mhm.
very intentional, it's not even about love, it's just about a secure, I'm here, this is me, this is the environment, these are my
Yeah.
feelings, my
Mhm.
stomach's gurgling, okay, I feel a little hot, okay, let's take off a sweater. Like it's about
Mhm.
really getting into your physiology and just being with it without judgment and without right or wrong.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I will say that like sometimes there might be something wrong, like let's say you break a leg,
Right.
please go to the hospital and get it
Yes.
fixed. you know
Yeah.
like sometimes, yes, that it's like, okay, that's not right, you need to go get that looked at. But
Yeah.
for so many of our ailments right now, they're being caused by this lack of connection with our physiology and trusting that our
Mhm.
body knows how to take care of itself.
Yeah, that trust in that inner healing intelligence. Like,
Yeah, it's just been leached out of us.
yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me started on all the pharmaceuticals,
Uh,
that have been prescribed. I'm sure you've worked with many people who have been on
yeah.
things that if they just had known how to be with that anxiety or be with that pain or that anger or that grief, and
Yeah.
they had expressed it,
Mhm.
that stored toxicity would leave and they wouldn't be waking up in the middle of the night with heart palpitations,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
or pain from an injury, when a lot of the times pain can be worked with and managed naturally
Yeah.
with
Mhm.
breath and with proper movement and with circulation. But again, like I said, if you break your leg,
Mhm.
done that before, please give me something for the pain, because that is not typical,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
there's lots
Yeah.
of different distinctions here.
Yeah, it's kinda like the distinction between, like, like you said, like, there being actually something is
Wrong.
wrong versus, like, this is a normal bodily response to maybe something that happened a long time ago,
Uh-huh.
that we can now be present with it in a way that can allow it to,
Yeah.
be come back to regulation and
Yeah. Peter Levine has said before, I remember him saying this in a class ages ago, that pain is trapped sensation.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that.
Like, let that sink in, because when you really understand that a lot of our, not a lot, from what I've learned, emotions start as sensations.
Yeah.
We just
Mhm.
interpret them cognitively as this is sadness, this is anger, this is joy.
Yeah.
But when you teach someone how to really feel their body, just like an infant can't say, "Mommy, I'm happy," because they can't
Mhm.
talk yet.
Mhm.
They're just happy.
Mhm,
And when
mhm.
they're sick, it's just they don't feel well and they
Yeah.
change and you see that something isn't right, but they're not
Mhm.
saying, "I have a sore tummy." They just are expressing their physiology based on what's happening
Mhm.
sensorily,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
how that infant is connected with in that moment, whether they're honored for what's happening or they're ignored or whatever
Yeah.
it might be that can screw up that intelligence. The technical word is introception,
Mhm. Right.
right? Being able to
Yeah.
perceive their internal environment.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what we're doing in this course is learning how to be better at feeling what's inside.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and it's so powerful, and it's like, a lot of things you're talking about, it's like it seems so simple, like, "Oh, take off your sweater if you're hot," like, go pee if you need to go to," it's like these things, but, like, when we don't have that feedback when we're little, that, to do those things, to express those needs, then
Yeah.
it's like we just suppress them, and then it has this. I think a lot of people don't understand the deeper impact that that has on the physiology of our
Mhm.
being and our nervous system and our even our emotional body as well, of course. And we have a almost 2-year-old living here on the land, and like
Oh, fun.
it's so amazing to just
Oh.
see how he's so his expression of his different
Mhm.
feelings, and just it's like so embodied. The joy is just like
Such a good
really
age.
big joy,
Yeah.
like full body joy, and the anger is like full body, and the sadness, full body also, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah,
just so cool to
just watch that kid and just be like that kid,
yeah.
it's this, there's so much purity and realness when, like I said, like there's so few humans who have been raised with that capacity to express along with boundaries,
Mhm.
learning how to clean and do chores, like all of that is really important. I think there's been a swinging, like a pendulum swing, my generation, probably your generation, your parents' generation, it was all very, often strict, stoic, don't, speak unless you're spoken to, that whole
Yeah,
children should be seen and not heard.
yeah.
Like that world, I hope is slowly dying out. But
Mhm.
then what I saw occur, and a lot of my clients fit this, and you might know many people that do too, where their parents then in our generation went the other way because they had
Mhm.
so much strictness
Right.
that they're like, well, I'll just let them run loose and be wild.
Yeah,
But
no boundaries and
no boundaries and no learning about how to really be, how to cook. I say that, but it's serious. Like, we need to know how to cook and clean and be respectful of our space and other people's things. And I think some manners are important in certain situations,
yeah.
because we've socialized ourselves. But there's
Mhm.
also that early part of growing up where there needs to be just full reign to do whatever you want. And as
Mhm.
long as, you're being kept safe, just like when you're hungry, when you're a baby, you should be fed.
Mhm.
When you're
Mhm.
not hungry, you shouldn't be fed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so as adults, when we start to realize, oh, maybe I didn't get that the way
Mhm.
Irene and Jose are talking about, it
Mhm.
can be a big tug of war to even listen to something like hunger cues.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why
Exactly.
so many people have trouble with eating and excess calories and just not being, because there's just the cue isn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like we have to reconnect a circuit that
You
didn't
got
get
it.
didn't get connected, and
Exactly.
that's it's yeah, and again, it's like seems so simple, but some of the exercises or the work, but it's like it's so powerful when we start to reconnect those circuits and have our
Yep.
nervous system be able to expand into relationship with the environment. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I
Yeah.
think, the more that I study about lately, my big focus, I mean, always it's been a passion, but especially lately, my big focus has been around pre and perinatal development and attachment trauma, and just how that imprint affects our, everything basically.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So.
if I keep it really simple, like,
Mhm,
so in utero at birth, the stuff that occurs to us when we are so raw, and
mhm,
we're basically just this ball of sensation and
mhm,
cells, right? Very intelligent sensation and cells, but we haven't differentiated, this ability to do this with our hands,
yeah,
to
mhm,
read, to
mhm, mhm,
discern what this is and that is. So when we're that young, um, what's really happening is we're just looking, we were looking for safety. We're looking for connection because
mhm,
that's how we're wired. And so whether, we had a traumatic entry into the world because of stress at birth, whether, we had to get yanked out,
mhm,
maybe we had low oxygen because we got stuck. Very
mhm,
common thing is umbilical cords get wrapped and babies will
mhm,
be born blue and nearly
mhm.
dead. This is a real thing,
Yeah,
or premature.
yeah, yeah.
Mothers sometimes are so stressed that the system just can't continue that pregnancy. And
Yeah.
my husband was a preemie, and you
Mhm.
know, like, these things really impact that physiology. And so, and one of the key things for someone who maybe knows or has a sense that that occurred to them
Mhm.
is cellular safety.
Mhm.
And so you mentioned Kathy Kane, one of
Mhm.
my teachers in her work, somatic practice, and her other kind of co-conspirator is Stephen Terrell. So they
Mhm.
teach together,
Yeah.
and they're really focused on early trauma, developmental trauma, attachment, creating a secure base.
Mhm.
And part of that work is working with the actual physiology. So working
Mhm.
with the stress
Mhm.
organs, I call them that, the kidneys, the adrenals,
Mhm.
the brain stem, which is, where the brain and the
Mhm.
spinal cord meet,
Mhm.
gut,
Mhm.
and then how the gut connects to the brain.
Mhm.
Um, these areas called the diaphragms, which
Mhm.
kind of like, there's that true diaphragm, which you know of course, and
Mhm.
you also
Mhm.
know that in our work, there's these other diaphragms that are more osteopathic tradition, but they really line up with the chakras,
Yeah.
the root, the belly, the solar, the heart, the throat,
Mhm.
um, the third eye, and then the crown.
Mhm.
And these areas in the body, when we're that wee and little, they're the areas that get hit with stress.
Yeah.
They contract, they get rigid, the fascia tightens, or
Mhm.
they collapse
Yeah.
because they can't handle the stress. And so a big part of the work that I've transferred from what I would do one-on-one if I was doing touch work is teaching the students how to guide into their body with their intention, but also if they can reach the hands.
Yeah.
Everyone can pretty much, granted your shoulders can move here, can touch their brainstem. We usually can touch our bellies. Obviously the chest area, the shoulders, the joints of the body are another big area that we work with. And people can be very surprised. I don't know if you remember, there was one lesson called Basic Joints, and I teach it with. And it's like, oh, we're just going to touch my wrist. What could that possibly do?
Yeah, so powerful.
But when the intention, if I was to just say, I just touch your wrist, I mean, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's when we set the foundation that we're going into the body with that mode. It's like we're putting on special goggles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we're putting on these virtual reality goggles to go inside, but then you're using your own movement to touch.
Yeah.
And I will say, notice, your grip. Are you tight? Feel it the way you would greet a child or an animal that feels terrified. You're not going to hold them with nervousness. You're going to be very gentle.
Yeah.
And you're going to ask permission first. Right. So there's all these little things that help to heal and bring safety back to an adult system that maybe had this prenatal trauma where, and this is not my script, but this is what Kathy would say, is when we've had that kind of early level trauma where we really had like near death, something like that, the message that the cells and this body gets is we're all going to die. No one is to be trusted and nothing is safe. And therefore I have to do it all on my own, not let nobody in. And so as you can see, that starts to funnel out into how people become independent.
Yeah.
Or how they don't let anybody in.
Yeah. Our whole culture really is, like you said in the beginning.
Yeah. So, and I think, I think independence is good. We need to have healthy autonomy, like that little 2-year-old that you just mentioned that's running around, like when they hit puberty, they're going to not want to have everybody watching them when they're dancing, they're going to want to cover up when they go to the sauna or they go to the lake. And that's healthy. It's like, okay, there's this differentiation between I am my own person and you can't. But that's part of this healing process too, right? Is someone might need to have boundaries because maybe their boundaries were violated.
Yeah.
So there's so many roads that this work can take.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And so, in terms of that imprint and like our foundation, I know for myself, I just keep coming back to that and like looking at it from all different lenses and how it impacted like my physiology and my layers of how I am in relationship now and just all of it. And it's so powerful. And for people that are listening out there who might be curious about like what that looks like for themselves, I wonder if you'd be open to talking a little bit about your own experience of, because I know you had you talk a lot about your physical stuff that happened like later in life. And I'm curious about how, what was the relationship in your family of origin with just grief and trauma and emotional intelligence, say, or that?
It was pretty much non-existent. Like, I mean, and it's not because mom and dad were trying to be abusive. It was really that world of stoicism. When I was little, if I cried, I don't remember, but I know that I wasn't told to shut up. And like, so I know there was elements of my early upbringing that were very solid and secure.
Yeah.
My mother is from the Philippines, so that culture kind of by default has a little bit more of that
Yeah, that heart kind
You
of.
see musical,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not Catholic, but most of them are, and so there is a little bit more of that care, in some
Mm,
ways.
mm,
Um, and my mom, lost her mother when she was 5 due
wow.
to, the Japanese not allowing penicillin into the country, which
Wow.
really sucked.
Yeah,
Her
yeah,
mom died of tuberculosis, which totally could have been managed with penicillin, but they were
wow,
under martial law
wow.
and they didn't let it in. And a lot of people got sick and died. And so,
Mm, mm,
she also had 8 other brothers and sisters older than her. She was the youngest.
wow. Yeah.
So the interesting thing is in those family systems, so yes, the mom died, but there were also older sisters and older brothers that pretty
Yeah.
much were like her parent, right?
So she
So,
wasn't left alone or
oh God,
abandoned to that
no,
degree that, yeah.
no. Her oldest brother was 20 years older than her.
Wow.
Just to
Wow.
give you, just to give you an idea, like you rarely see that here in North America or
Yeah.
even in Europe.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, but she also, and I don't want to go into all of her history, but that generation, none of them dealt with their traumas.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, but I also think that because of the faith and it,
Mhm.
some of that does get healed when you're with others who are joyous and you're
Mhm.
in a religious practice.
Mhm.
Um, but I also know that, we didn't talk about feelings and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so I kind of, through my early childhood, teenage years, I was kind of that defiant teenager.
Mm.
I did a lot of bad stuff, when I was 16 and 17, and a lot of that defiance and kind of recklessness is, from what I've seen, a way to express and to kind of get that anger out. I mean,
Yeah.
the punk, the metal music,
Mhm.
the head banging, like all
Mhm.
that stuff is like to kind of get that energy out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly, I turned out fine, and
Yeah.
I passed high school and I went to university and I
Mm.
had amazing relationships. So I wasn't, the lack of that connection and community, if you will,
Mhm.
and what's the word I'm looking for?
Mm.
You're a mom, so my sense is, you will listen if your kiddo comes to you with a problem. And so
Yeah.
the thing is, I would never have come to my parents with a problem.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Not because I didn't not because I didn't need it, but I just didn't know that I could because
Yeah.
that relationship wasn't there. And it wasn't because they were abusive, it wasn't in the field.
Uh-huh, and maybe you weren't seeing them, I think there's something about seeing our parents, like, do that for each other too, right? And
And
then
that
that
never
opens up.
happened with my mom. And I
Mhm.
never saw them fight. Well, I saw them be silent to each other, but there was never like a crying or a hugging or a heart to heart.
Mm.
And so again, they're still together. They're still alive. They've never
Mhm,
divorced.
mhm,
They have their little things.
mm,
But I also know that that's them and that's their path.
mm,
And from it, I had to learn, how to be in relationship. I was married for 8 years before my current husband. And,
uh-huh, mm,
it was good at the beginning and then it kind of shifted and it just didn't work. And it wasn't
mhm,
abusive, but it was, we were both young in our
mhm,
healing journeys. Um, and
mhm,
I was wanting to go to a different level and he just wasn't. And it was like, I
mhm,
can't do this. So, we kind of have these opportunities, I think, Josiah, to keep
yeah,
recapitulating what we maybe didn't get.
yeah,
Then how can you, if we talk of relationship, find that person or that group of people
yeah,
whom allows you to be you, but also allows you to, how do I say this? The one thing I would say that's been interesting with my current relationship is that, with Seth, whom is also part of our team, he
mhm,
also does what I do,
mhm,
is the ability to kind of like call each other out on stuff.
Yeah.
right?
Beautiful. So
Like,
key. Yeah.
it's like, and it's not about being mean,
Yeah.
because it's about like, that wasn't cool. And
Yeah.
not like in a mean, but just like, do you realize what you just like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, it just this, that is a pattern that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is that you can't have that discussion when your person isn't also wanting that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it gets
Absolutely.
tricky,
They both
because
have to be, yeah,
they have,
wanting.
yeah, like this nervous system work, I will say it's very difficult if your significant other, your partner, your spouse, your wife, your husband, whatever, if they're not interested in any development. It doesn't mean they have to do the course and the program,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
when you start to uncover your natural emotions
Mm.
and you feel like you need to growl
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
the shower because you're feeling an emotion,
Yeah.
and your spouse says you have to stop that, it makes
Right.
me uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and then we have a problem.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, because it can be, I think, triggering for people when once we start to express more, if
Yeah.
they're not used to that or comfortable with it in themselves, then it can be triggering for people. Just like our
Yeah.
kids with their full expression of being
Yeah.
can be triggering sometimes,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No, I get messages from students and people online that are like, I've been doing this work, but when my kids have a an attack of emotion, I still get really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I can guarantee you they're not uncomfortable
Yeah.
showing this. So
Yeah, exactly.
something going
Yeah.
on in you, and no judgment, but that, like, our capacity to be with an intense sensation and emotion in a child
Mhm.
is indicative of our capacity to be with that same thing in us,
Mhm, exactly. Or
right?
and likewise in our partnerships, like you were saying, that
Yeah,
ability to that willingness to but then I
yeah.
think also it's, like, also true that, the more regulated we get in our own nervous system, the more capacity we have to be in relationship and in those times of, like you said, you call each other out and it's like, well, but we can't be calling each other out when we're both dysregulated, right? Because then that just
Mm-mm.
spirals into
It can spiral into some bad,
some
and
bad
so
places.
and so and the thing is I guess, like, you can have two people that have dysregulation
Mhm,
together,
mhm.
but the key is that the communication is open so that both people know we're working on our stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe one partner is doing it through some other kind of therapy, and maybe
Mhm,
another partner is doing it through this work that we do and
mhm,
that I do. But the
mhm.
key is that there has to be open communication,
Yeah.
and there also has to be a willingness of one of the people being like, I can't, not now. And
Mhm.
if that isn't about, it's not about shutting the person down. It's about, I don't have the capacity to be with what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Give me a moment, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot of, it can be fun
Yeah. Mhm.
when two people are interested in their own healing. And when we get into the course, we actually now have a letter, I guess you could say, a PDF
Mm.
that we wrote so that people can give that to their significant others,
That's awesome.
or their parents, because a lot of
Yeah,
people still live with mom and dad
yeah,
because they are unwell and they can't be on their own. And so
right.
it is important that the people in your home, granted it's safe to let them know. This is,
Mhm.
also, some people do this work and they're still in a toxic environment,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's okay. It's just a matter of knowing how much you share. So there's so many
Mhm.
distinctions,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
With it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if I've been answering a question. It's a good tangent we've been
Yeah,
on.
no, that's great. I think it's yeah, and I think we can keep going down that, but I know we need to wrap up soon.
Mm,
So
mhm.
I'm wondering if you wanna just talk a little bit more about because you have upcoming starting March 7th, the,
Yeah.
Smart Body, Smart Mind program starts again,
Mhm.
and then there's some other resources that are
Yeah.
available sooner. So do you wanna just let people
Yeah.
know?
So yeah, Smart Body, Smart Mind. We only do it once a year. So we open enrollment this year. It'll be the 21st of February to the 6th of March. Um, And basically, it's a 12-week program, and it's a for life program. So when you get it, when you do it, the materials all live on a course website, but you can download them, you can save them, the audios, the videos, so that you can access it obviously offline. And it really is something that is meant to be done at your own pace. I think some of the biggest questions we get is, what if I can't get it all done in 12 weeks? It's like, I don't actually know of anyone who has.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I was saying to you earlier, I think it took me at least 3 years to work through all of the material one time, like just going through certain ones again and again, and then okay, now I'm ready to move on to the next one, and so yeah, it's a lifelong.
It's a lifelong thing. And, you know, we've had some folks say like, well, if it takes that much longer or takes longer, why don't you do it over 12 months? And the reason why is everyone's a little different. And it's a lot to be engaged in a process with a group for that long. So 3 months is actually a long time to kind of do a concentrated amount of work. And for some people, after, you know, a couple of weeks even, they're like, okay, I'm going to take a break for a week or two. And then they go back to where they finish, or maybe they'll go to the very beginning and start again. Right. And so you have that flexibility because the content is there. So that's one of the things that sometimes people really worry about. There is live support when we are in the actual kind of semester, if you will. So we're doing Q&As. There's moderation support with my team. We're all in a forum. We're not on Facebook anymore. So people can ask questions, and my people who are all trained in SE and beyond are there to answer, like 7 days a week.
Amazing. Yeah.
I don't think there's a course out there that offers that level of support with like very professional folks. So there's that. And then if folks want to just get a little taste of the theory, a little bit of the neurosensory work that I do, the Healing Trauma series, which is a free 3-part video series. Video 1 is probably one of my favorite videos because I go into like some really cool analogies about capacity building and the body and trauma and the responses and the nervous system. So that's like a must watch. And then video 2 and 3 are a bit more science, a bit more of the research, some of my story. And then the third one is a bit more how this work works. And then that series also has 3 handouts. They're like more information. So don't be overwhelmed, but it just gives everything in different contexts for people who like to visually read or hear or watch. And then the other thing, depending on when someone hears this from you, the 21-day nervous system tune-up. This is a separate course that I created from Smart Body, Smart Mind. And that one is something that anybody can start that any time of the year. So if someone's listening to this, you know, late January, and they're like, I don't want to wait till March 7th to start, you can start that course now. It's practical, it's theory. About 90% of those lessons are in SBSM. And so what happens is if someone does this 21-day starter course and they want to continue with Smart Body, Smart Mind in March, the cost of the 21 days is taken off. So it's kind of like you're rolling into the next thing.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Like
so those are the main things. I think everything there. And then of course I've got, you know, videos and YouTube and all that.
Yeah, lots of free resources as well. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah, so I'll be sending out the link to both the Healing Trauma series with this video. Yeah, wonderful. I'm so excited for all the people who are going to receive this from you this year. Yeah, and I think it's just such a great, you know, as somebody who works one-on-one with people, it's such a great adjunct to that, because it's like it just means that when people then come into session with me, it's like they have all these different skills that they've built, or like practices that they've built, they've built some capacity, they've built some ability to have that interoception again, like you talked about, that being able to feel inside. And so then it's like, and they understand the some of the like psychoeducation around why things are this way, why we're doing these like funny little exercises that make seem weird otherwise, right? And then like we can go in and it's like the session that you're paying me for then is it's like now we're just like really going in and doing the work that where you do need someone else, because I think some of the stuff we're not meant to do it all alone, right? We are
totally
relationship.
That's a really good point, because it's true, like there are some things that you can completely do on your own, and then sometimes, and it depends on your history and what you're working with, but there are certain things that really require a bit of human connection. It can be through Zoom, so that there's these little micro pieces that we will miss sometimes if it's just ourselves we're working with. But you're correct, like many of my colleagues, probably your colleagues, even the team that I have that helps moderate the forums, they will say that when they work with their clients who have gone through even the 21 days, but also SBSM, like there is just a level of understanding and foundation online already compared to those who know nothing. And that's really why I created this, as I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, was because of our higher brain. Like if we were all just a bunch of, cattle or animals in the wild, like we wouldn't be having this conversation, because we
wouldn't be having these issues.
Those animals didn't create the technology that's putting us into a situation where we need this. But because of this higher brain of ours, we do need to understand the theory. We do need to understand, why are you asking me to look over there when I have like gut problems? But it goes back to, why would you listen to a baby's whimpers and see that they're looking away? It's like, 'cause that's what they're naturally doing, and so I think that because we've been so turned off of our natural physiology, but then we have this higher brain that needs to make meaning. I can't say it any more clear. We have to know the theory, and we have to understand these basic processes that go on in the body. Otherwise, what happens a lot of the time is someone will have a sensation, or they'll have something that occurs, or a weird movement that happens. And if they don't understand what that weird movement might be, they might not even notice that that's an old protective response. That's exactly. Like, please don't hit me. That kind of thing. And so when we know the physiology inside and out, and I teach as much as I can to the highest level that I can, it really gives a person the empowerment to know what's going on in their bodies, and their kids too. Like their mamas and papas, when you get, I've heard so many parents say, this completely changed my parenting. Like I had no idea that this little person was being run by their nervous system.
Exactly.
Trust me, they're not trying to be mean to you. They're just angry because of something else.
And that cycle of needing to like fully express and then settle, and so much in there. And I just love, I think it's so important. And so like, exactly like you said, it's so empowering, because it's like, I think we sort of, this is a cultural or societal thing as well. It's like, we have this idea where it's like, okay, there's people who are like experts at healing trauma, and there's the ones who deal with it. Whereas, something I was just saying to the community I live in here this morning is, it's like, I think really in order to be a high functioning organism as humanity, it's like we actually all have to be highly skilled in conflict resolution, in grief tending, in trauma healing. So
we're complex.
We're complex, and
complex. We've been treating ourselves kind of like bots and little conditioned robots, right? And it's like, we're not, and that's where we get into trouble, is when we don't realize, we're all human. But humans, from what I can tell, are all very individual.
Totally.
We're not like the cattle. We're not like the impala.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not like the litter of kittens and puppies. You know, even then you'll have, you know, if you've ever had a litter of cats and
Oh
dogs,
yeah,
like
such
little
individual.
individualities
Yeah.
within them, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But then you take these humans, which we are, and you smack this higher brain into
Mm-hmm.
them with this
Mm-hmm.
mammalian physiology. And
Mm-hmm.
holy moly, like what a crazy experiment this is that we're in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very important work. Sticking to
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm biased, but yeah, it's super important work from what I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think it's just the work you're doing and offering is just really, truly revolutionary for
Thank you.
people and for the world, for our society as a whole. And so, yeah, such a pleasure to be able to just share this time with you
Yeah,
today and have this conversation. And yeah, I
definitely.
appreciate you helping people out there learn a bit more about what it means to become their own medicine, as you say. So, thank you for
I'll keep
joining us.
doing it. It's my job. Thanks, Josiah. Thanks for having me.